Alright, legends, welcome back to Here's Rodder's Reviews. I'm your host, Rodney Stewart, and I finally got around to watching The Batman, and missed it in the cinema, but I was flicking through Amazon and came across the home premiere of it, so I made the wee investment of 15 quid, sat and watched the movie, rented it out for 15 quid. Movies, I enjoy them on the big screen, but I'm also getting to be quite a fan of these home premieres. It's something that I felt was really needed for this movie because it is a long one, sitting there at about 3 hours, and honestly, I reckon you could have trimmed out at least a good 45 minutes to maybe an hour out of this movie. There's quite a bit of time in here that just felt that it was wasted, but genuinely had a good time with this movie and enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting to enjoy it. But I have to say now, anybody that knows me will probably think that he's not going to watch this because Robert Pattinson's in it. Was never a huge fan of the Twilight franchise. I actually only got about, there's very few films in the history of cinema that beat me, that I can't get through. Twilight was one of them. I only made about halfway through the first one and turned it off. Very, very rarely that happens, but it is what it is. And some people would say you're not going to watch this because Robert Pattinson has been cast as the Batman, but that's not the case. I actually do like him and a lot of his movies, but Twilight just was not a good movie. And that's another video or another episode for another time. But I've got mixed feelings about this movie. I enjoyed it a lot, felt it was very long, but there's a lot to like about it, and there's a lot to not really like about it either. Robert Pattinson actually does make a very, very good Batman. I enjoyed him as Batman, but the big criticism I would have of it is quite similar to a lot of the other criticisms I've heard online, is that there's no difference between Batman and Bruce Wayne in this movie. And all the other people that portrayed Batman would have had a slightly different attitude when they were Bruce Wayne and when they were Batman. And Pattinson kind of plays the exact same character in or out of the mask in this movie. The cast on here is absolutely fantastic. Zoe Kravitz is in here, very good. Paul Dano, kind of iffy on him. Jeffrey Wright, John Turturro, Peter Skarsgård, Andy Serkis is absolutely fantastic in this movie as Alfred, and Colin Farrell as the Penguin, absolutely fantastic. But essentially in this movie, it's year 2 of Batman. This is a fresh Batman. He's only getting used to the role of the protector of Gotham City. Very, very early days for him. He's only recently got the bat signal, and Commissioner Gordon isn't Commissioner Gordon yet. He's still a lieutenant in this movie. At the very beginning of it, the Gotham City mayor is murdered by a man calling himself the Riddler, and yes, he leaves a message for Batman, Riddle, of course. He investigates alongside the Gotham City Police Department, which is, a lot of people aren't really happy about this here. Lieutenant Gordon's constantly bringing the Batman in, but the rest of the police is like, this is a vigilante, what the hell are you doing, sort of a thing. Batman and Gordon discovered the Riddler is left a thumb drive in the mayor's car containing images of Mitchell with a woman, Annika Kozlov, at the Iceberg Lounge. I'm looking at some of the notes here I have on the computer just to keep myself right with this movie, because there's a heck of a lot goes on in this here. We get the the detective version of Batman in this movie. It's very, very similar to the early comic books of Batman. He was the detective comics and whatnot, and we delve into that a lot deeper, which we don't really get in the other movies. So that was an interesting thing. And this nightclub, the Penguin, operates the nightclub alongside a mobster, Carmine Falcone's lieutenant, essentially he is. Penguin pleads ignorance of everything that's going on, but Batman notices that Selina Kyle, Annika's roommate and friend, works at the club as a waitress, and when Annika disappears, Batman sends Selina back in to the Iceberg Lounge for answers, and discovers that there's a lot of the high rolling people in Gotham are mixed up, and a lot of stuff going on here. And essentially, to cut a long story short, the Penguin is going after corrupt leaders, essentially, in this movie. The Riddler abducts Coulson, straps a timed collar bomb to his neck, and sends him to interrupt Mitchell's funeral. When the Batman arrives, the Riddler calls him via this guy Coulson's phone and threatens to detonate the bomb if Coulson cannot answer 3 riddles. Coulson refuses to answer the third, the name of an informant who gave the Gotham City Police Department information that led to the historic drug bust in mobster Salvador Maroni's operation. He dies. This bomb explodes in Batman's face. He gets knocked out, and it always leads to something that I find such a stupid thing in these movies. Everybody wants to know who Batman is, and at any point in any of the TV shows and movies, if Batman gets his ass knocked out, which happens in this movie, a bomb goes off in his face and he wakes up in a room in the police department, and he's surrounded by police officers, and as he's waking up, some guy is like, oh, we should take the mask off and see who this guy really is. And that's when Batman jumps up and starts fighting his way out, essentially. But I'm sitting thinking to myself, right, okay, Batman got knocked out at this funeral because of this bomb, and they had all this time to take him from there to the police department, and not once did anybody somewhere along the line say, oh, let's take the mask off this man and see who he is. And I know it's probably a stupid thing to complain about, but why make the point after him being knocked out for so long, whenever he's starting to come round, and somebody's like, oh, let's take the mask off him now. So it's a stupid little things they got there that make some of these movies kind of feel slightly amazed. But to say that the film looks fantastic, it is absolutely brilliant. The escape sequence in this here from the police department from Batman is very well shot. We get a look at his first attempt to glide off the top of a building, essentially, and he doesn't use the cape as like a set of bat wings like we're normally used to, but he uses one of these parachute suits, and it's I can see what they're going for with this movie, but there's parts of it that didn't really make a lot of sense to me in places. Now, I've said it before on I literally recorded a podcast there for the science fiction show Scheme Me Up Body, where I was doing a Star Trek episode, and I was thinking to myself while I was recording it, it almost seems like TV and film these days has slipped into that realm of the music industry where everything has just been put out like a production line these days, and it's just like there's, some stuff just seems to be very rushed these days. But you can't really say that about the Batman either, because we had the whole lockdown situation that held the release of this film back, so they had loads of time to actually work out some of the kinks in this movie, which I don't think really happened. When you do get a hole in the storyline, you could say, that's a major one. One thing that kind of jumped out to me, not while I was watching the movie, I was kind of sitting a couple of days after it and I thought to myself, oh, that was kind of strange. And it's the sequence, you've seen it in the trailer, where there's a car chase happening, and it's actually the Batmobile chasing the Penguin. And we see it in the trailer for the movie, where there's this explosion, and you see the Penguin looking through the rearview mirror of his car, and in the background you see this massive explosion, and the Batmobile comes flying out from it. Very, very good sequence within the movie. Absolutely fantastic. But I was sitting thinking to myself, how many people died in this sequence in the movie? Because they're tearing down the freeway, there's cars getting put off the road, crashing. That huge explosion you see the Batmobile jumping through is actually a tanker truck that overturns and explodes and takes out some cars and whatever else with it. And you're thinking to yourself, right, how many people actually, when you sit down and think about it, there's the lorry driver there, there's the 2 or 3 other trucks and whatnot was around there. So you're thinking, right, there's at least 5 to 7 people died in that explosion, not counting the amount of people that maybe get hurt or injured, or maybe even killed in the previous part of the car chase up to this point. And when they do track down the Penguin at this point, they literally just, Batman and Gordon kind of slap him about for a bit to get information out of him, then just go away and leave him. It's almost as if there's no repercussions for anybody in this movie bar the Riddler. It's strange. I don't know. I would really need to watch it again. I literally watched it once, and it did fail the social media test for me. My gauge for if a film's good or not is if it can keep you off social media. If you don't touch your phone throughout the movie, that's a winner. If you are at some point checking your emails or your social media and whatnot, it could be better. That's exactly what happened in this movie. Very, very long. But after the Riddler takes out most of the people that he's after as far as corruption goes, it turns out that he's actually going to go after Bruce Wayne at some point. Obviously not knowing that Bruce Wayne is Batman, because of Thomas and Martha Wayne. We find out that the Riddler's holding a grudge against the Wayne family. Bruce's butler and caretaker, Alfred Pennyworth, is hospitalised after opening a letter bomb addressed to Bruce. And this is an attempt to take out Bruce Wayne, of course. And the Riddler leaks evidence that Thomas Wayne, who was running for mayor before he was murdered, hired Falcone to kill a journalist threatened to reveal details about Martha and her family's history of mental illnesses. So yes, there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie. Alfred, of course, is going to survive this attack, and he maintains that Thomas only asked Falcone to threaten this journalist into science, and Thomas planned to turn himself and Falcone over to the police once he found out that the journalist was actually murdered. And Alfred fully believes that Thomas and Martha were killed because Falcone wanted to prevent this. Selina reveals to Batman that Falcone is her neglectful father, so you get a lot of new origins in this movie, as well as far as where the characters come from, who they are and whatnot. And she plans to kill him herself after learning that he strangled her roommate Annika, which is her whole role in this movie, is to try and find out what happened to this girl. She turned up dead earlier on at the drug deal that the Penguin was caught at, and that's what he was running from, and the car chase happened. So, there's, as I say, the Penguin just seemed to get away with everything in this movie to a certain extent. Like, there was no repercussions of anything that he had done, not that I seen anyway. They were just going after and trying to capture the Riddler, essentially, in this movie. But she decides she's going to go Catwoman. Selina Kyle, saying that Falcone is her father, decides she's going to go off and kill him. But Batman and Gordon arrive in time to stop her, but the Riddler kills Falcone himself as he's been arrested. And there's a lot of inner monologues of Batman in this movie as well, and he's ahead of the game for a lot of stuff, but then something like this happens, and he's catching up with it as it happens, and he realizes he's been coerced into a certain line of action that's going to get the Riddler to the destination the Riddler wants to get to for the stuff that he wants to do. So it is very, as I say, very, very early days for Batman here, and there's a few slip-ups that an older version of Batman maybe wouldn't have slipped up on in the movie. Riddler gets unmasked as a forensic accountant Edward Nashton, and he's incarcerated in Arkham, where he tells Batman he took inspiration from the Batman when targeting the corrupt. So the Riddler's setting himself up as the shadowy version of the Batman in this movie. Yes, it's an interesting enough movie. The Riddler starts to make a friend in there coming up towards the end of the movie, which turns out to be Joker, of course. But we discover as well that, just because the Riddler's caught doesn't mean his plan's over, and he has set up a load of bombs around the city that it turns out that Gotham is actually built below sea level in this movie, and there's a huge wall around it to keep the sea out, essentially. So he's got all these vans parked along it that he's set to explode, and he's got a massive bunch of followers online that are going to continue on his work for him, essentially. So the wall gets destroyed, the city gets flooded, this massive band of crazies that are dressed up like the Riddler attack and try and take out the new mayor as she's been elected. And yes, it's as I say, there's a heck of a lot going on in this movie, but a lot of time wasting going on in it as well. So by the end of the movie, Batman rescues the new mayor with the help of Catwoman, and in the aftermath, she decides that Gotham's beyond redemption. It's never going to be saved, so she decides to leave the city. But Batman helps out in the recovery of the city, and he's, for the first time, year 2 of Batman, at the end of the movie, you actually see him getting treated more as the hero in this movie than the vigilante in the closing moments of it. It's great. Don't get me wrong, it's a great movie, but part of me is like, I wish they would just, at this point, I wish they would just select a Batman and a storyline and stick with it for a bit, because it just seems to me in recent years, at least the last 10 years or so, maybe longer, that and this is social media all over for you. It doesn't matter what you do, someone's going to have a problem with it. And there's always some executive in Hollywood that's like, oh, you didn't like our movie? Okay, let's think of something else. Well, let's reboot this, guys, because these dudes don't like it. And these people need to start realising that's actually in the higher ups of the film studios actually need to sit down and realise to themselves that these days, whenever it comes to creating content online, I can tell you this from experience myself, having done it for quite a few years on different YouTube channels, you are more likely to have a successful channel, whether it be a YouTube channel or a podcast or something out there, if you are 100% negative all the time. If you're on there complaining about something, you're going to have a more popular channel. You only have to look at any of the other creators out there, or no, this is the God's honest truth. If you make a video or something that's fairly upbeat and positive, you're going to get that usual set of viewers. But if you make something that's clearly over the top negative, you're going to double, maybe triple those figures each time. And that's what's happening. It doesn't matter what the heck the story is, it doesn't matter who the actor is, it doesn't matter. There's going to be a group of people somewhere along the line that's like, oh, we don't like this, and it's simply to get more clicks in their content than actually giving a real perspective on a film. So, that's what's been happening, and Batman has been a big sufferer of that for the last God knows how long. Like, this is not the version of the Batman that we were promised at the very beginning. We were promised at the very start that the Batman was going to be written and directed by Ben Affleck, and him also starring as the Batman. So we were going to get that version of Batman that was in Justice League. Now, for me, as much as I enjoyed this movie and Robert Pattinson as the Batman, very good as the Batman, not so much good as Bruce Wayne, but I do have a real soft spot for Affleck's Batman, and I really wish that had went a little bit further. But again, that's another example of the fan base just hitting on the thing for the fact of hitting on it, because Ben Affleck's Batman wasn't a bad version of Batman. In fact, he was a very, very good version of Batman whenever you set him up against the Justice League. Because this version of Batman we've got with Robert Pattinson is too much in the real world to work in a Justice League movie. Affleck's Batman was kind of, it was real enough, but he was kind of that step into the kind of unbelievable enough to this is the Batman that could actually work with the Justice League. But this one here, I can't see this version of Batman, the Robert Pattinson version of Batman, actually working in a Justice League environment. So it's crazy. The whole thing has fallen down around their ears as far as the extended universe for DC is going. It almost seems like the studios are just too scared to say to the people that, okay, right, this is the version of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, whoever it may be. This is the version we're making. You can either like it or don't watch it. Those days are long gone. There's too much people pleasing going on from the studios right now, and every fart's end there's got a new version of Batman coming out. Just like what Spider-Man has gone through in the past 20 years. Like, how many different versions of Spider-Man has there been right now? It's insane. Probably Batman's probably the one that's gone through the most changes over the years, but you get my meaning. Select a story, stick with it, and take a cue off the Marvel movies, DC. At least they've come up with some sort of design that's going to be connected right the way through. Like, we got Iron Man and all those movies, Captain America, everything leading up to the Avengers and Infinity War and Endgame and whatnot. It's all been separate stories, separate superheroes, but it all is interconnected and comes together in a beautiful, beautiful way heading forward. Not like the whole DC fiasco where they just like, oh, we're going to start at the end instead of the beginning and then try and, we'll do our teamwork movie first and then we'll go back and try and do standalone movies. Oh, you don't like Affleck? Okay, we'll recast him and do it with somebody else. But then that's just throwing everything you've done so far out the window. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it. The movie is good enough. It's a good enough movie. It's a good enough. You're not going to waste your time sitting down to watch it. It is a lot longer than it really needs to be, I think. But yes, it's successful enough. But another thing that I've been really thinking about is whenever it comes to these movies. Let me see, just in the notes here, the budget for this movie was $185 to $200 million, and at the box office it actually made $764.6 million. I don't know if that's just the opening weekend or everything up until now, but that's a huge profit. But again, having said that, a movie like this, I think they need to gauge it in a different way as far as success goes. Because a movie like this here, everybody and their dog is going to go and see one of these movies on the opening weekend just to see if it's a screw up or not. So I feel that opening weekend estimation of how big a hit a movie is just not a feasible option anymore. Like, I think you're just going to have to stretch that time period out a little bit now and take the opening month as a whole and see what the figures are saying after not just the opening weekend but the following month. I don't know. Again, as I say, the TV and movie industry has indeed become the music industry, and I can't see it getting much better from here on in. I think the days of the classic movies are long gone. You know, the ones with the real rewatchability factors, like the Goonies or the E.T.s back in the 80s. You know, something that you mention a name and somebody's like, oh, I know that movie, I've watched that countless times. Like, I think those days is gone for most of the stuff coming out now. I am starting to sound like one of those crazy old men that have just like, oh, back in my day everything was so much better. That's not the case at all. That's just how I feel, and I wonder if anybody else has got a similar experience with things. But for a movie review, I've sat here and talked for 26 minutes. Well, see, I've been doing nothing but recording podcasts lately, longer form content, so I'm going to cut it off here. If you have seen The Batman, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. And, stay safe, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.